Hello there, everyone. You may notice I'm a little lonely here right now. Why am I so big on here? Well, either way, someone broke something. So welcome to the Embroidery Nerd Group. Today's going to be a little different. If you've been following the group, you may have noticed there's been a little friendly conversation going on in the contest, seeing who would have the best puff-off designs. So we have two people here to bring in. We can discuss who the actual winner is. So let's bring in Jeff from Fuller Embroidery Works and Justin from JA Digitizing. Yeah, and I don't need to be so big anymore. So we'll go there.
Be so, big, welcome. Matt. How's it going, guys? Good, I take it.
Matt, who's the winner?
Well,
everybody wants to know.
The winner, drum roll,
is the audience.
I think the winner is actually coming in through the comments.
Is that my sister with her W?
I say Amy's W wins.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was literally a W for winner, so there's no critical thinking required.
Right. I mean, it's laid out there right there. Let's grab a couple of comments since we do see people there. We have Amy here. Yay, my favorites. You guys are awesome. For those of you guys that don't know, that's my sister. And Frank Dunn, Mr. Frank Dunn, had a very creative design that he did that definitely was noteworthy, I guess, as we're going to call it. The invisible puff. That was pretty cool. I thought so. We have Al here watching from South Carolina, I believe. How's it going, Al? And good morning, Mr. Frank. So in the UK, I guess it is the morning. But we wanted to recap a little bit for you guys. We do have the webinar coming up here. Matt's going to drop a link for that in the description, in the notes, in the chat thingy.
Give me enough time to prepare for it.
Yeah, I'm going to give Matt time to prepare for it, and I'm just going to throw it out there and say, Matt, take care of it. So if for those of you guys that aren't in the group, I would definitely recommend joining the group. It is the Embroidery Nerd Group. If you don't answer all three questions, then you're not going to get in. So make sure that you answer all three questions. If you invite in somebody, all four questions. If you invite somebody, make sure that they answer all of the questions, because it is what we screen with, and you'd be surprised how many people don't answer the questions. But in the group on Monday, I kind of threw out a little challenge to Mr. Justin Armento and said, hey, you know what? Let's go. Let's throw down. And he showed up. Justin showed up. And it ended pretty big. It was pretty awesome. So let's go ahead and I guess first I'm going to catch some more of the comments because they're coming in here pretty quick. We have Eric saying, greetings, folks. Hello, Eric. I like your submissions as well, too, I guess. And we're going to call them submissions. Jocelyn, hey, y'all. All your puffs have been so amazing. Thank you very much. Frank, he did invisible puff because there was no cat driver. It was pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. I thought it was really creative. And we have Candace. I'm signed up and ready to learn. I'm pretty sure Justin's excited to teach all of it. And Jocelyn, you both showed up. And we definitely did. So let's kind of recap our designs. Justin, did you bring home all your hats?
I did.
Oh, dang it. I don't have all my hats.
Day one.
That one was pretty sexy. I'm not going to lie. For those of you playing along at home, I don't have my day 3 hat. Apparently my son thought it was important to wear it to Taekwondo. But I went with a classic college block letter, straight up U. And throughout the challenge, it was a lot of fun. I think the funnest part was anticipating what you were going to do next. Day 2, I believe I did this one.
Yeah.
So I threw out that, and Justin retaliated with his awesome design there. Bamboo is what you were calling it, correct, sir?
Yes, kind of get that bamboo look, the faceted split foam.
And then day 3, which I don't actually have mine. Like I said, my son thought it was creative to take it to Taekwondo, but it was an F. for future, not failure.
Yeah, it was
It was definitely a letter grade.
the sword handle one, which
Yep.
was pretty cool. But yeah, my day 3 was my dragon there.
Yep. And then day 4, I mean, Justin cannot do a dragon without me doing a dragon.
Day 4, I would say, is pretty impressive on both sides.
That's a weird looking dragon.
Don't mock my Chinese dragon.
Oh, I don't know why. I thought it was a lion.
No Asian hate, Matt.
Uh,
Justin's came out really fire. I ended up making a hat from scratch so that I could get a little over a 3-inch tall design on there. Creative problems, creative solutions, I guess is what I'm going to call that.
I'm just going to call it cheating.
Well, I mean, it is easier to say that it's cheating than it is to call it a creative solution. So it was definitely a lot of fun. And I know that I learned a lot about my process, my machine. I have some failed designs here and things just that I learned from doing the puff off that I'm pretty sure I know some of the stuff is going to be in the webinar. I don't think all of it's going to be in the webinar. It's kind of, I mean, we had a lot, you had a lot to put into your webinar.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's definitely going to be some focus on the designs you saw here, just so it's, you know, something familiar that if everybody saw it in the group, they can apply it to something that they're familiar with. But there'll be some other good stuff as well.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite parts is while I came out and threw stuff at Justin, and we kind of pushed both of our, I mean, we pushed the creativity on this, I think. But one of my favorite things that happened as a side effect is we had a lot of people that started posting up pictures of their puff and the stuff that they've been working on, and that was really cool to see some of the other stuff that we had that people had been working on in the group. So
I did a puff design.
Did you, Matt?
This one.
Nice.
Just tape it to your hat, and now you fulfilled the requirements for the challenge.
That has some good detail and good.
It's not very flat.
I'm not going to say that.
In a scale of
This is 4D puff.
from textured to Jeff.
Yeah. Pretty textured. I like it.
It's definitely not a Jeff.
You can totally machine wash it too.
Yeah, there you go.
Just slap it right back on.
So I'll grab a couple of the comments here. We have Ken, howdy from Los Angeles. Hi, Letty, hi guys. Vacation greetings, awesome. Candace, I really like Jeff's day 2. I'm pretty sure that was I call it the Twisty Puff, just in case you guys were wondering.
The Twisty Puff.
Yeah, and Jocelyn, I thought it was a lion too. Yeah.
See?
It was supposed to be a dragon. Apparently, I'm just going to call it a lion. And Frank says some great designs over the last few days. And Amy says, Matt is fair game if you use duct tape to tape on your patch.
Nice.
So
it's just a rolling in with the rules.
Oh, and Carol saying, hi, Masters. FYI, it's not showing on the EMB Nerd Facebook page. I'll make Matt look at that because he's technical difficulty.
I am very difficult.
And we have Cindy King. I don't have puff design yet, but I was watching 1 or 2 of the classes. Yeah, Justin did a really good job on the classes that he put out. For those of you guys that don't know, I've been getting questions like this, so I'm just going to kick us out here because I think it's easier to answer it everywhere at once publicly, I guess. So the first class Justin did, if you guys haven't taken the class, the first class is on, like, I would say digitizing theory a little more and execution. So how to put the foam on the hat, how to sew it out, how to clean it up at the end so that you can get those really professional results. Right. The second webinar was a little bit more into digitizing, how to digitize when you're stacking things. That was number 2, and it was also very, very good. It was just a little bit more digitizing, software agnostic. It was more techniques and less how to do it in specific software. And then number 3 is going to be, well, you guys have seen a lot of the designs that are probably going to be in number 3. So you guys can take a best guess at what exactly is going to be in number 3. And so there you go.
Yeah. Number 3 is the reason why those designs, by the way, were blurred out, because we had to save the work we were doing for the puff off.
And then we didn't even use those hats.
No, no, not at all. Yeah, number 3 is going to be kind of applying what you learned in 1 and 2, and taking what you learned as far as the digitizing side and the technical side of embroidering and whatnot, and applying it to these wow designs that are multi-layered and multifaceted to achieve those using the techniques that we learned in 1 and 2. I'm not going to say you have to watch 1 and 2 to know what's going on in 3. It definitely would help. But if you are somebody that has some experience already with 3D Puff and you've been running it a long time, just watching 3 would be perfectly good for you as well, since you already have that prior knowledge.
Yeah. And one thing I will say is that these multi-layered, multifaceted designs, it's not just throw the foam on and walk away and come back when it's done. It's a lot more intensive. And, you know, some of them I would say are not even, like, they're not production friendly completely, but you do get that wow factor. And sometimes when you just want to show off the work that you're doing, you know, I'll invest an hour, 2 hours into a design because I want to show people the work I'm capable of doing, not necessarily the work that they want me to do. Because a lot of times you show that wow factor. You post that on your Instagram, you post that on your Facebook, and your TikTok is now the next new thing. You post it on there, and people are going to look at that and they're going to go, whoa, I need my shirt done with a left chest logo. If they can do that, they can do this.
Yeah, it's really good too if you have a retail brick and mortar store. You have a shelf full of all the hats that you do or shirts, and you see it, and it's pretty good. Like when I go to Japan, there's a patch shop right off base. I've mentioned it before in other lives. You walk in, and the entire wall all the way around you is just covered in patches that they made, and you get lost in there for a couple hours looking at patches, and you end up walking out with $200 worth of patches when you only wanted $5 worth.
Yep. You know, I mean, it turns in, you're going to get that one customer, that 2 customers going to say, you know what, I'm going to pay $80 a hat. I want it. But for the most part, you know, some of these, like, honestly, the Twisty Puff is very production friendly. I had run that all day long on my machine and kicked that out because it's the way the design runs, and it's the same with the sword handle. The way that those designs run, they run in a way that you could kick them out efficiently, effectively, and still be able to market those. So it comes down to the type of design. You know, I'm not going to do a dragon this detailed because this is, let me look at my stitch count here. This is almost 16,000 stitches.
Right.
You know, when you're looking at a design and you're going into puff and they're really usually heavier density because you are cutting the needles, you're looking at, you know, 15,000 stitches running 800 stitches on a machine is going to be, I forget how many minutes. I looked it up before we started, but you know, it's really cool to do that kind of stuff. I definitely recommend it. And we have a question here from Carol. And she is asking, what is Twisty Puff? And that would be my day 2 design here is what we're calling that, Twisty Puff. And
you froze, Jeff.
I froze, yeah.
So we didn't actually see it.
Just for you froze.
Now Google killed me again.
Yep. Matt died. It's okay. Justin saw it. So Justin will be going over a lot of those techniques here in his Facebook Live, but I'm actually gonna open this up a little bit more because one of the things that was very interesting about what I did is I learned some limitations on my machine and materials, and I had some nightmare designs to run, and I'm sure Justin, you had a nightmare design to run. So let's I'll let you start off. Talk about one of the harder things that you had to deal with when you were doing this challenge.
Well, I when I took the challenge, I in my brain was thinking to myself, okay, let's kind of start off with things that are a little bit more unique, that aren't your everyday 3D puff designs, but those are those ones that are kind of a little bit more production friendly, something that you would actually do for an order. I always say, charge accordingly, even when it's just regular 3D puff. It's going to take more time to do than just a regular embroidered hat. But these things that, if you price it right and if the customers if that's what they want, they'll actually work in production. As far as the limitations and the drawbacks that I did find, because I probably sampled all of these at least twice. The Bear, 6, 7. Is when you're getting into these multi-layered foams, it's actually, I started experimenting with different thicknesses of foams, different brands of foams, different densities of foams, and that can make a big deal. When you're doing the run-of-the-mill stuff, like the one color letter with an outline, using a nice dense foam that you found that gives you that nice lift. While when you're doing 12,000 stitches over a 2 1/4 inch area in multiple layers of foam, that may not necessarily be what you want to do. So experimentation is definitely a big factor. I'm at a point where I can digitize a regular 3D design, pretty much be comfortable that you can throw it on the machine and go for it. These, it's kind of like, all right, run, tweak, fix this, fix that, and then you kind of master these new techniques. So I'm excited about sharing what I found too, because I've learned this week. Your challenge definitely made me think a little bit.
So I'll go ahead and I'll talk about my worst experience, and this comes down to poor choice of materials. That's what I'm going to call it. And this is actually going to be my day 2, and I was working on it, and I had this really, really cool material, and I thought, I'm going to use this. It's going to be awesome. So what you guys see here, this is Stingray Leather. The interesting thing about Stingray Leather is you can see all that kind of bead on there. So the beading is actually an enamel. It's a naturally occurring enamel on the animal. And I thought, I'm going to throw this on top of some foam, and I'm going to run it like high temperature vinyl. And it's going to work.
And it did.
And it did not. It did not work. It did not work. It did not work. It did not work. So I actually did the Twisty Puff, and I have the hat here. It was painful and excruciating, and I actually finished it. And you can see that there's not enough of the material showing from underneath the twists, but on the edges, you can still see, let me go the right direction. You can still see that the leather was sticking through. I actually had to go through and I had to cut that out by hand. I will not lie. I went through so many needles that me and my son sat at my machine watching this thing run with safety glasses on. I think that's the first time I've ever put safety glasses on operating my embroidery machine since I've ever owned one. But that was the rate that we were breaking needles as it was coming through. The needles would come down and they'd hit that enamel and they'd deviate one way or the other way. And if it went the wrong way, it went to the top of the needle plate. And of course, there goes the needle. And now you've got a big problem. But I did. I sat through it and I ran it. I sat through the whole thing. I don't think I'd ever do that again. The other limitation is, of course, my machine. It goes about 6 millimeters in height. And I found that out experimenting on stuff to do. Actually, when we were looking at stuff for the webinar, to do the webinar, and different techniques that we could do that is when I discovered that issue. And I mean, I've got some pretty cool samples sitting here, spread out. I've got hats everywhere. Because as you know, Justin calls it cheating, but I call it creative solutions. So I started making hats, and this is going to be the second Jeff's story of things you should think about before you do something stupid. So I started making hats, and I've got roughly 5 of them that I made sitting here, and I made 4 of them, and we got pretty good at making them. And then I went, you know what? Let me measure the sewable area. And so I measured the sewable area, and it turns out that the hat pattern that I was using was like 2.5 inches of sewable area, and that was with the bill removed. flat panel. They're pretty low profile hats. So I pretty much scrapped that idea. I was not going to deal with that at all. And surprise, surprise, I added an inch to the bottom of the pattern, and there we go. We've got a hat.
So you didn't have to get a new pattern. You just extended the pattern out.
Yeah, I extended the pattern out. I tried to get a new pattern, but that didn't flush out. And I mean, honestly, I was going to scrap it. I was digitizing something else to get it done. And, late nights, I think you pulled an all-nighter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got that smile. He pulled an all-nighter. And so I scrapped that. I was getting ready. I was pulling an all-nighter. And I ended up just saying, you know what? I don't have anything that's good, that's better than what I had before. I'm just going to drag the nodes down on this and pray. And that's pretty much what happened. I drug the nodes down because I cut it on the laser. So I drug the nodes down an inch and I prayed that it was going to work out. And I got lucky that it did.
So what are you using to sew the hat together?
That sewing machine right there, it's a Juki DDL 8700 flatbed. For those of you guys that don't know, yes, you can sew a hat on a flatbed. It's different process than doing it in manufacturing, and I'd really like to get the post-bed sewing machine and a double needle sewing machine so that I could do production on them. But you can do it with just that machine, and so it's a little bit more work. It takes a lot more time. But I'm going to grab a couple of comments here. So Eric says, on now, Facebook out of commission for me. If you're having issues, head to the YouTube, folks. We are streaming to both of them. So if you are having issues, jump on over to the YouTube channel. Cindy, talking about machines, my Baradin doesn't like to do puff, but my ZSK loves to sew puff. It can be different for every machine. I think even if you have two machines in one shop, sometimes they run files just a little bit differently depending on how they're made and how they're used. So Carol here, is there a place for classic puffy foam, not the dense? So I think Madeira sells two thicknesses. They've got their bodybuilder, and then they've got like a hard dense bodybuilder.
No, the bodybuilder is the dense one, and I think it's just called classic foam is the one that's not too dense. So I guess that would be considered a classic foam that's not dense at all. There's the foams you can get at craft stores, but in my experience, they don't hold up to embroidery at all. They're just going to smash right down. They're so flimsy. But yeah, I think, does Gnold have a classic as well as their dense? I never buy
classic. I think they have both a classic and a dense, I believe. So I'm going to take this question. Jeff, how did you handle the post-bed machine starting out? Using one for doing patch hats, and it's very fast. Even with a variable speed motor, any hints or tips for that, feel free to answer in my inbox since it's off topic for this live. So on the sewing machines, especially with the servo motors, they actually there's a dial on them. You can turn them down. And so you can turn them down. The other thing is just use a light foot. Go slow and just, you can hear it start to kick and it'll turn. But I don't have a post bed machine. I want one. It's on my list of things to do. And
another thing you could do too is mechanically change your pulleys.
Yep.
To actually change how fast it goes. But
yeah, you can do a gear reduction. They sell those. And then we have Cindy. I ordered from Gnold today. I got a lot of classic and dense. So there are two different settings out there, and really, like Justin alluded to this earlier, depending on the look that you're going for, you may not want to use super dense or super soft. I've got my hat sitting here that I did. It's 12 millimeters. And of course you guys can't see it because it's black, but it's really boxy. I used really heavy dense foam. And so it's really got that look to it, that cliff look to it. But if I didn't want that, if I wanted more of a rounded, a softer bend to it, I would definitely do that. But I'm going to go ahead and take a look here. So Matt informed me that we have all of the different days up here. So that's the sword handle. That one handled a little bit different, the Twisty Puff. Justin's, that one, I'm not going to lie, Justin, that one, I dropped my jaw. I was like, oh no, what did I step in? Because that really, when you posted that, my initial thought was, oh crap, what have I started?
Except that's not the 4-letter word you said.
Yeah, that's probably not the first 4-letter word I said, but it definitely.
When someone challenges me, I gotta come out swinging.
You definitely came out swinging. I was like,
it's almost as cool as your laser etched sign over your shoulder there.
You like that?
Yeah, that's pretty snazzy.
Father's Day gift.
Ooh, they're thinking. They know you.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll grab a couple more of the comments here. We've got Al saying, thanks, guys. And Eric, I've used classic foam because I did lots of foam in my career before dense was available. I'd say it loses a ton of height and the corners aren't particularly crisp. And it goes, they have, there's a technique that you can do. It's called a 3D satin. It's actually in some software. You can drop it where you're building up underlay essentially to get that kind of soft, that soft curve to it. You get the bump, but it's a soft curve. But in my opinion, like I've used it before. I'd rather use foam, to be honest with you.
That's what this is.
Yeah. I mean, you get those 3D satins, you end up, your density goes way up and it just becomes a thing. But we've got a, there we go. We've got a comment here. I think I read that one already. Yep. And we got Lisa. So if we aren't digitizing our own puff designs, do we tell the digitizer to digitize with crisp corners and assume they are digitizing for dents? So I'm going to let Justin handle this one because as the resident production digitizer in our group, he would be the best. I know my answer, but I think I'd defer to Justin.
Yeah, unfortunately, in the digitizing, I can't make sure that you have nice square corners on the foam. I digitize for foam specifically. I do always suggest people use something like Madeira Bodybuilder or the Ganol Dents because those are the most widely available in the market from our vendors that we all use. Those are going to be your best results if you want those nice stiff corners. There is times where, I'll throw it out as much as I can if people ask those type of things. There's some other foams out there that we kind of explored and found that are extremely dense and really hold up well. They have some drawbacks to those. Trying to sew through something that's pretty dense, but they're pretty spectacular when you want those nice square corners. But there's times where a customer will come back and say like, oh, I saw this design on your website and it's similar to mine that you just digitized. How come it's not, it's not very tall, it's not squared off? And I'll let them know, use these foams and you'll get a better result because they are using something that's like, the store-bought ones or the classic ones that are a little bit too soft. So it's like Jeff just said, it really depends on the look that you're looking for. Pretty much my digitizing is going to work on any type of phone you use, unless it is a little bit extreme, kind of like the really extreme dense ones. Or if you are using those craft store ones, any digitizing is going to smash them down. You're not going to have any lift at all.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes into the materials aspect of it. You got to choose the proper materials for what you're trying to achieve. And if you're just trying, if you say, I want to do foam and you go to Walmart and you buy a little craft foam, you're not going to get the results that you want. You want to look for something that's designed to give you the look that you're looking for. So that would be the Madeira Bodybuilder, the Ganol foam. They were designed with embroidery in mind. Now, that's not to say that you can't get good results with other materials that are out there, because you can, but I think that it's good to get a good foundation on a good known material to understand what's happening before you really start to experiment with crazy stuff. Because you can, like, if I hand a design to Justin and he goes and he runs it on his machine and it runs fantastic with Madeira Bodybuilder, and I run it on my machine and it runs like crap with craft foam, Justin, the file's good. It's my choice of materials that was the problem. And if I'm new and I don't know that, it's the materials and not necessarily the digitizing, that's where a lot of confusion can come in, is because you need to know, am I using something that's made for embroidery? Am I going to get good results? And once you understand kind of I'm going to get good results, these are the supplies I use to get good results. I wonder what happens if I try craft foam from Walmart or cosplay foam or, some other foam. And then you can run a file that is good, and you can see the visible difference, and you can kind of pick what you want. But I would say definitely get a good foundation with good known materials that are kind of in. I would say the Gnold foam and the Madeira foam are kind of industry standard foams out there right now. You get the good base, and then you kind of decide what to go out there as far. But I'm going to grab a couple more comments here. We've got Eric as a bottom layer for multi-layer. I can see how doing a low platform setups to get a background to run dense on top of course, for intentional rounded satins. It comes down to materials. Justin, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's something that I'm covering in the webinar this weekend, is definitely using different foams for different techniques within the same design.
Yep. And so we have Eric, I want it denser than the high dense, and I know that too. So caps and planking. Caps are when you have an open satin on the end, you want to sever it off because you always have to cut the foam. And planking is when you have an intersection of satins, you want to make sure that you're giving it something there to hold the stitches up from sinking into the cut. I know I think we talked about that a little bit in the video last week, as well as a couple previous videos to that, and it's covered extensively in Justin's first webinar.
Yeah, part 1 covers everything about that as far as all those techniques and what they do and the function of them.
Yep, and it's we've got 30 minutes left. we could go into the intricacies of that, but I'm pretty sure I would go longer than 30 minutes because I tend to not shut up.
Yeah, with the first webinar was almost 2 hours long or something?
2 hours, and there was a lot of time in those techniques, those basic techniques of 3D. So yeah, if you haven't seen part 1 and you are curious about that, Al, I think it would be good to go check that out, and it should answer all your questions. That link right there.
Oh, I changed it.
Oh, he changed it.
Sniped. And then you got part 2, which was another almost 3 hours long or something.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't remember how long that one was, but I was there.
I think that was about 2 hours as well.
Was it?
Yeah.
I know after watching the first one was when I attempted this one. You guys digitized it for me on a live. I didn't digitize it, but
yeah, that's where I got
that's
where I got my nickname, Justin. Thanks.
Yeah. We got to do a blooper reel.
Yeah, I think we need a blooper reel because that is definitely blooper reel material. Yeah. It's definitely something Justin's not going to live down for anytime soon.
But that'll be the new intro for the stream is starting, and I'll just have that playing over and over.
Blooper reels. Oh, there we go.
And then this one too, I did, and it's going to be a little hard to see, but there's a little bit of puff just to kind of try to.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Try to take it to a different level, but my dog keeps farting, and it is absolutely rancid. I'm sorry if I'm not here. It's because I'm dying right now. Good thing this isn't smell-o-vision.
As far as off-topic things, go ahead, Justin.
Well, I could say this as much. You definitely redeemed yourself this week, and no longer does it apply your nickname. But again, it wasn't supposed to be an insult.
I know, and I think it's hilarious. I laughed so hard. I showed it to everybody. Everybody laughed. It was great. It's all in good fun.
Your one hat you did as a flat though, so that was flat embroidery.
Yeah. It's all good. I've been called worse by other people. So it was all in good fun. And, again, that webinar or the puff off was a lot of fun. And I know I went through a lot of needles in refining some of the techniques and stuff that I used. And I think, Justin, you went through a few needles at least.
Yeah, on my bear, I definitely went through some needles trying to figure out the best results. So, like Carol on the group was asking today if I use any special needles, and I said, if you mean broken ones, yeah, I was using all kinds of special needles.
Yeah, they I use 7511 sharps, titanium. I like the titanium ones because they seem to last a little bit longer. They hold up a little bit better. I think you use the 75. You use organs, right? But they're 7511 sharps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I use the Gross Becker.
There was she referenced that post that Luis had that he has some different type of needles. And weren't you talking to him about that? What kind of needles were those?
The DBX K5Z1s, I think. I would have to look at the nomenclature, but essentially the highlights of that is that the shank geometry is different, as well as the point to give it a little bit more structure. But it's thinner, and then the shank, the groove, the long needle groove in the shank actually goes up higher into the shank versus as they stop a little bit lower. And so those were the two benefits of that. I ordered some. I haven't gotten them yet. I think they're being manufactured in wherever somebody's out there with a blacksmith hammer and they're banging out my needles for me, so I'll get them eventually. But it just happens to run into, if you're doing puff, if you're doing hats, you have to make sure that everything's kind of working well for you. And if it doesn't, you're going to have problems, and it's going to be needle breaks. And I mean, needles I don't know how much needles are. I don't even pay attention, but they're not that much money a piece. And it's always good to have several boxes sitting around for when that happens. So we'll catch here into some of the comments. Eric says, starting from known good materials and settings will get you the best foundation on which to experiment. And that's really what it is you guys, we need to get the foundation in there. And that's why Justin structured his webinars. We could have just done one really, really long webinar. But everybody's at different levels. There's people that have never done puff before that number one's going to be good. That'll bring them up to another level that, number two is going to be good for some people. Number three is going to be good for other people. But if you started at number one and you worked your way up to number three, you're going to be at the same point. And so it's all about getting in that good, solid foundation and understanding of what you're doing so that you can build on top of that and go forward. Right. So,
right. Yeah, someone that's starting off is going to grab one of the designs we did this week and just throw it on the machine and get it right the first time. There's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of experimentation. Like Amy asked here, how many times did I sew out the bear before I was happy with it? I think on just flat samples, on sample material, I think I was about 6. One of them got a bird's nest and ripped my material out of the hoop. So yeah, that was a learning curve there. But like 6 till I got to a point where I was happy with it, the way it was, the sew quality, and then it was 2 hats that I ran that I finally got that last one that was good. So about 8 total.
Yeah. I know I've got samples galore. Like I sew out a sample, I cut it out of the material, I come and I put it on my desk and I set it down, and that's now my sample pile. And I reference them when I'm sure you do the same thing. You look at the sample, you bring it back to your office with you, you look at it, you look at where you're going to go and how you're going to fix it.
Yeah, I have an old shirt that we use, for sampling, that it's like I have all these bear heads on it facing me. I'm like, okay, I know why that one didn't work and why this one didn't work. And yeah, it's right in front of me when I'm making those changes.
And then you're like, okay, I've got it. And then you put it on a curved surface, and now it's all over again. The changes.
Now you're dealing with a curved surface or a seam if you're doing center hat. So those are the two things that always tend to throw a curveball at you when you go from flat to hats.
Yep. So, and actually, because I am sitting here and I have one here, I'm actually going to explain a little bit to you guys about the seams and how they work on a hat, because this is something that I found really, really interesting. So I've got the seam here. You can see it's got a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and it's a little floppy right there. So the reason why the seam is such a problem is we've got this really tough buckram here. And then what they end up doing is they fold the seam. They split the seam allowance on either side. So they end up folding it open so you can see the material on the top. And so now you've got 2 layers of buckram that you're going through, and then they wrap that with twill tape. So now you've got 2 layers of twill tape and 2 layers of buckram, and that's how your center seam is structured on a hat. And that's why it's so thick and it can cause so many issues, is because now you've doubled up your buckram and you've added in an extra 2 layers of material on top of that. And now you're going through 6 layers of material, and 2 of them are supposed to be really hard. So
I think when it comes to the dreaded Richardson 112s, they have like 16 layers of material.
Yeah, and it was interesting because I didn't really know that until I started taking some hats apart and looking at it. But it is like they do wrap those seams and they get incredibly hard, and that's why, is because they're wrapping it. They're adding in so much material, and then you add your stabilizer on the back of that, and it can kind of get crazy. But I'm getting behind in comments, and so I'm gonna try and catch up. So Justin, your dragon hat, did you do the underside of the bill as well? Sorry, I believe that was Jeff's hat, and that was not a hat when I started. So
that was the material that Jeff cheated and sewed together to make a hat.
So this is actually sublimated twill right here, and then that is embroidered, but this is sublimated down here. And I matched the colors of the design on the sublimation with the thread colors on the top through this really, really cool web app that's out there. If you guys haven't used it, it's threadconverter.net.
Matt?
He's not paying attention. Matt, we're talking the website threadconverter.
It's just threadconverter.com.
Threadconverter.com. So I use threadconverter.com to find out the RGB values of the thread that I was using, and then I would pull that into my program and change the color of the corresponding elements with that. So Justin's
I was scrubbing through a YouTube video.
Yeah, Justin's like cursing me right now under his breath. I can see it. Letty, was it a sequin needle he used? It might have been. I would have to go back and look. It's quite a few posts back. If I remember right, when I looked up the specs on the needle, it said that it was good for extra thick material, punching through extra thick material. But I'm not sure. Eric, I feel called out by long webinars. Not at all. I attended Eric's patch webinar. It was great. If you guys are interested in doing patches, it's an excellent one to go to and watch. And it's about 4 hours long. I call it Eric's TED Talk because most TED Talks are about 4 hours long. But there was a lot of good information. It was a lot to take in and absorb, and I got a lot out of it. So I definitely recommend that. Carol actually says, use bear spray next time just to keep the bears away. Michael Downey, hey fellas, what a ton of fun this week was. Brilliantly diabolical marketing. It was definitely it gained a lot more steam than I thought it would. The amount of people that showed up and started putting stuff out was just like I was surprised. I don't know about you, Justin, but it was.
Oh, I loved it, and I wouldn't necessarily call it that, Mike. I would say maybe like 3D awareness.
We need a ribbon, and it's got to be in 3D Puff.
3D Awareness Week. That's officially this week in June from now on.
There you go. So now you guys have heard it. There's going to be we'll call it a Puff Off 2022, and we'll call it 3D Awareness Week. And there, I know that we're going to have to come up with a logo for that, and it's probably going to be a ribbon.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be in 3D Puff. So just so you guys know, there you go. And now Eric here, there are 2 kinds of digitizers, those who destroy garments in testing and those who like to say they don't. Absolutely. Everybody destroys stuff. And I think it's really important for everybody to know that, a lot of times when you're starting out, and I know it was for me, when I started out, everything that I saw was perfect. Everything that everybody else put out on the internet was perfect. And then there was the stuff I was producing. And a lot of times when you're starting out, you don't realize that, everybody has these problems. And I think it's important that you need to know that, Justin, with all his experience, he ended up changing that design, 6 times? He did 6 sew outs. Mm-hmm. And I definitely went through multiple sew outs, but I only showed the best one.
Right.
Because that's what you want when you go on your social media. You want to show everybody, hey, look, this is fantastic. You don't want to show them the failures. And I think it's important that people can see the failures every now and again.
So when I post and I'm bringing this to Facebook, this is what I want you to see. I don't want you to see me throwing things and expletives coming out of my mouth. And
I bet it was a fun week in your shop.
Yeah. I walk out there with, like, you know, supplies in hand, and my operator's like, oh no, here he comes again.
But you know what? At the same time, your operator's probably like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know.
The end result's like, let me see.
Yep. He's like, I'm leaving him alone. I'm going to come back when he's done, if he's smiling.
Mm-hmm.
But if he's not smiling, I'm walking away. So let's see here. Want to first, thanks for the Puff 2021. When using samples, do you use clothing or backing? So I actually have a recommendation that was given to me by the manufacturer of my machine, and I don't always follow it, but adding fabric into the mix can change the way the stitches lay down. It is a holistic, it's a holistic process. And if you're digitizing, like if I'm digitizing something and I want to run a sample to watch it, the physical needle penetrations and how it's path, that kind of stuff, I'll throw it on backing. But if I really want to know what it's going to look like, I'm going to put it on a very like material. So
yeah, it's definitely if you can, as close as possible to the material that you're going to be running the design on. We have like a little pile of the stuff that, you know, unfortunately have damages, and if it's a material that we, you know, don't have any of, it's a good opportunity to say, all right, well, I have a whole shirt here that's going to be good for sampling. Or even when you place an order, you know, place an order for, you know, a dozen or two shirts that you're going to do, get an extra one if you know that it's a popular shirt that you do a lot of. I typically like to get you know, a light colored one and a dark colored one version of whatever you're sampling on, and that way it's going to cover both spectrums as far as the colors that you're going to be running. But yeah, I mean, hats. Some of the hats that the first one I didn't like, I had sewn on the left panel. You got the other panel to work with. So there's a couple of hats at work that I have different designs all over it because, you know, I'm going to use those hats to sample on.
Yep. And I mean, you can too. Like, I'm going to use my dragon as an example. I had a lot of color changes in there. I ran a sample on stabilizer just because I wanted to make sure that all my color changes were right before I put my one material that I had built together on that machine. I wanted to make sure my color changes were right. So, you know, it comes down to, are you testing the design for quality on the material that on what you want it to look like when you're done? Are you testing to make sure that your color changes are correct when you enter them into the machine? You know, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. But if you want an official answer, always on fabric that's like what you're going to sew on, because that's going to give you the best representation of what it's going to look like when you go to actually do it. So let's see here. So Carol asked, so what do you need to do when digitizing from a flat to a hat? You know, it's you have to move to bottom up, center out. I know Eric describes it like smoothing out a tablecloth. I think that's probably the best analogy I can think of for that process. Or like I iron fabric. It's the same thing.
Yeah, to simplify the answer, I mean, every design is going to have its own little way you have to do for hats specifically. But you got to start from the bottom, work your way up, go from the center, work your way left and right. And you also want to, you know, build some type of foundation of underlay to make sure that you really secure that hat to your stabilizer. So those are the basics that you need to know for hat digitizing. Yep.
So going down the list here, we got Cindy Keene. I sure enjoyed seeing all the 3D Puff logos. It was a lot of fun coming up with them. Justin definitely knocked me out of the park a couple of times, at least 2 days. Mike, sure. 3D Awareness Week. Nice. And this one, I like it. Letty says 3D Awareness Week, where no foam will be left alone. Oh, and Eric here, the file names on some of my earliest designs. Yeah. .1, .2, .3, F1. How many times do
Revision
you have
one.
a final? And Amy says, is next week's challenge biggest failure challenge? I no.
If I kept those, like maybe, but I didn't keep any of those.
You know, I only have a couple of them here that I keep, and it's just because I learned something significant on them, and I want to be able to remember that. And so they adorn my office room on the side that you guys can't see to remind me of things that I need to keep in mind when I do next time. So
I have a $15,000 mistake. Does that count?
Maybe. And we got Cindy here. Hey, that's the wrong word. Backing is out. It's stabilizer. I learned that from Eric. Al, it's always great for your staff to see your failures and successes. Helps with their confidence and knowing that we are always learning and improving. Yeah, you know, they're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. And I think one of the hardest things for me that when I started in this industry was throwing things away. Like it shocked me how much waste there actually was in embroidery. Mm-hmm. Justin's like, not me. I just
No, actually, one of my newer operators, you know, he before working for us, he never had an embroidery experience, and I always like to have that one person in the shop that I can kind of rely on as far as when it comes to the 3D work, because it's not for everybody. I mean, some people just can't grasp the hang of it or don't like it because, you know, it is definitely something different that goes on in the machine, but he's getting really, really good at it. And I've been teasing him. I'll walk by and look at his work. I'm like, man, you're getting good at this. And so this week he's sitting there watching me, you know, throw hats away and stuff. And he'll just stand up there and shake his head like, I can't get it right, huh?
He should have walked over and said, you know, you're getting good at this.
I do say that. It's like every single time there's a big job that comes up, we're working on a really big job that has all 3D puff designs. And just, man, you're getting good at this. So he knows it's like, great. I'm gonna be the 3D puff guy now. So yep.
Yeah, and you know, this is a really good suggestion here. Go to a cleaners and ask for old dress shirts. Yeah, I mean, anywhere you can get spare fabric. I've put out on free websites or, you know, free Facebook groups before. Hey, you know, anybody have any clothing that's got holes tore in it that you're gonna throw away? I could really use it. And they think, oh my gosh, you're gonna need it for you're gonna wear it. Let me get you something new. I'm like, no. I'm gonna sew it. I don't care what it looks like. I just want to sew it. I need the structure. So there's a lot of I found that it's not hard to find old scrap materials to embroider on. So definitely always go out there and look. And I'm going to throw something at Matt because I haven't had a chance to look at this yet. But apparently Matt made a flat embroidery blooper. And yeah, you know, I was thinking the same thing Justin's thinking, like, what is going on here?
It's exactly what you think it is.
Is it a clip of my?
Exactly what you're thinking.
It's Justin's nickname for me.
It goes to the time code of the live where you said that.
We're over here trying to teach, and Matt's over here making videos like this.
Nothing like blooper
reel. I just clipped it, I didn't even do that. I just watched it, and yeah.
He just watched the whole thing.
That's what he was doing when he wasn't listening to us.
There you go.
Actually, exactly why.
Actually, you know what? That's not that bad. That's not what I thought it was. So we're still good.
I was still listening. It's just my multiple conversations is not as strong as it used to, especially when I have Jeff talking over here and over here at the same time. It's a little.
I am pretty fancy. I talk in two places at once.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out and see what it is.
So we'll go ahead and we'll jump down a couple of those comments. We'll say Crystal here. Duncan misses you too, Justin.
Ex-operator.
I think she should come back.
I think both of them. It's a couple that used to work for us, and Crystal and Duncan. They moved back east, back home. But Duncan was probably one of the best operators when it came to 3D Puff. I mean, his stuff was immaculate.
Duncan Crystal would make a pretty cool company name.
We'll just start throwing stuff. You know, we got to do one of those that like I throw something that way and Matt throws something at himself. It comes out of nowhere and hits him in the face. Yeah. And we got Carol here saying thanks, Matthew. And I think this one today, I think we're going to end it a little bit on time, which is good because we don't always go over too much. But for those of you guys that are just tuning in, that are just catching on, remember, we've got Justin's webinar coming up this Saturday. A couple of cool things that are going to be about the webinar is that, well, one of them is we've got a discount code with TextMike Direct that we're going to be offering to those that attend the live webinar. Justin, you've worked on with a vendor as well.
Yeah, Buckets of Ink. They have a discount code as well for the people that are in the webinar. And one other exciting thing that we're going to be bringing up in the webinar that it's going to be pretty cool that that we've been wanting to talk about for a while. So those attending the webinar are going to hear it first. So pretty exciting stuff.
So pretty exciting stuff.
Okay. I was a little slow.
He was ready with the link. He was ready with the link. I'm gonna fire this on. But yeah, that's gonna be really, really cool. So if you guys want to go out there, you know, you can support Justin and the work that he's been putting in here at embnerd.com/puff3. If you guys are trying to join our Facebook group, please make sure you answer all 3 questions. We do screen or all 4 questions, I guess. We do screen the questions, and if you don't answer the questions within a day or you don't answer all the questions within a day, then we just deny it. You can always reapply to come back in, but we do screen with that. So Justin's webinar is coming up in July here, coming up fairly shortly. We're going to have an interview with a couple of people that work at Wilcom. I'm pretty excited for that. We're going to start advertising that next week after, of course, Justin's webinar is done, and then we're going to have. And then we're going to have another class by Elite Caroselli that's going to be going on too. But that's going to be later on in July. So other than that, we've got ISS Fort Worth coming up in September. And then, Justin, do you have anything else coming up?
No, I think that sums it all up right now.
That sums it all up right now. So one more time before we leave, we're going to jump over to the brand and we're going to show you in theory, in order, our day 1s. And then our day 2s. And that one is day 2, right, Justin?
Yes.
Yeah. Day 3. Matt didn't upload Justin's day 3.
I didn't find it.
Justin, pull up your day 3.
There it is.
And then we've got our day 4 designs right there. And that one right there. And we'll turn those off. And I will let you guys know that my number 1 design that I liked out of all of these running was Justin's snake, or dragon, Justin's dragon. That one, even out of all of them, that was my favorite. Justin, which one did your favorite end up being?
I think my bear is my favorite, but I like this one just because it was relatively easy to do. The impact of how different it is really creates some value to the hat, and it's still production friendly. So as a production guy, I like that one. So and it's a really unique look, I think. Yep.
Matt, which one was your favorite?
I think I would go with the bear just because the amount of detail and the different like techniques in it. But I'm also kind of partial to, I think it was the J. I think just the use of colors with the material and everything made it pop pretty cool. I could totally see that selling like hotcakes at an airsoft or mil sim.
Chair softers. No, airsoft.
You could sell each of those for like $120. I'm not kidding, probably.
I'm not kidding, probably, maybe, sort of. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I definitely enjoyed it. I think Justin enjoyed it. We definitely had some smack talking going back and forth between the two of us in the private chats. And are you going to post first or am I going to post first type of stuff going on each day. But all in all, it was definitely a lot of fun and a lot of work. And I kind of wanted to do a recap on it because I wanted to make sure everybody knows, we struggle too sometimes. And one of the great things that I've really been blessed with by being part of the Embroidery Nerd is now I'm surrounded by people that push me. And with this challenge, it was a push to push what we could do on our machines, what we could do with our designs, and what we could achieve with 3D Puff. And I think that's one of my favorite things about being part of this is now I'm surrounded by people that push me every day to come out with a product that's better than what I had before.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's whether you're an embroiderer or a digitizer, sometimes it's good to break up the everyday thing that you're doing normally in your routine and the type of designs that I do on a regular basis. You throwing out a challenge like this, it makes me completely change my way of thinking and, get those brain cells working again.
It goes into that. I don't care how long it takes. It's going to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right.
Just discovering new things that I can use in regular 3D designs.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. If you guys haven't watched it, if you guys aren't going to be part of the webinar, I highly recommend it. Justin's going to be throwing out a lot of really cool techniques that are most of them, I want to say almost all of them, are really production friendly as well as stunning. And it gives you that wow factor that you can take to your customers and show them, and they can go, yep, I'm using this guy. So with that, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and close this out here. We've got Matthew Enderley from Patch Phrase and the Embroidery Nerd, Jeff Fuller from Fuller Embroidery Works, as well as the Embroidery Nerd. And we have Justin Armenta, JA Digitizing Studios, also with the Embroidery Nerd. And thank you guys for hanging out with us, and we'll see you guys next week.